and welcome back to my sewing conversations over coffee. Well, in fact, it's tea today. I'm a bit later on this morning. I have one of my children off on a teacher training day. We had a sleepover. Well, he had a sleepover, a friend over last night, so we're all a little bit tired this morning. But I'm here and I'm coming on to chat to you this morning about sewing tools or sewing equipment. I've had lots of new sewers joining my social sewing community group on Facebook recently, which is fantastic. And lots of them are new sewers, so beginners. And a question I get asked quite often when people come and join me for beginner sewing is, what do I need? What do I need to get started? There's so much on the market to buy, so many tools and equipment and pretty things that can catch your eye. It's hard to know what to really go for and what to spend your money on at the start when you're beginning. So I thought I would come on today and show you what my favourite tools are for if you're starting out when you're sewing, and what you really need to spend your money on when you're first starting on your sewing journey. So let's have a look. Now, this isn't an endless list and this isn't a precise list. This is just things that I like to use and I think are really handy to have when you're first starting out, and for lots of different types of projects you might endeavour on. I'm also going to show you a few things of my favourites that I use in my day-to-day sewing, which I couldn't live without as well. And of course, if you've got any ideas or you think I've missed something, then pop them in the comments below, because I'd love to hear what you can't live without when you're doing your sewing every day as well. So let's have a look. Let's have a slurp of my tea. What things do you really need when you're beginning your sewing? Okay, so when you first start out sewing, there's a few things you're going to probably get with your sewing machine when you buy it. And those things could possibly be a seam unripper, which is one of these little doofers. And this little tool is going to help you unpick your stitches if you go wrong, and it's got a whole host of other uses as well, and lots of those uses I share with you guys in my tutorials. So if you want to check out my tutorials and start sewing, I'll pop the link to one of those up above. So you definitely need to have one of those in your sewing equipment stash, but you probably get that with your sewing machine. The other thing you might get with your sewing machine are some spare bobbins. Now again, these I feel are a must. If you only have one or two, get yourself some more. Get yourself some universal ones, or ones specific to your sewing machine, and have a few extras. It's really nice to have a few full up ready to go, because one of the worst feelings is if you're sewing a project and your bobbin runs out mid-flow, and if you've got another one that's full ready to go, it's such a great feeling just to pop that in and keep sewing again. So I always try and keep a few of my standard colours that I use quite often, or if I'm making a particular sort of seasonal thing. So at the moment I've got lots of mustards and sort of browns that I'm sewing with, so I keep a few full up ready to go for my sewing machine. So definitely some bobbins, and again, you may get those with your sewing machine when you first buy it. The other thing you might get with your machine when it first arrives is you might get some spare needles. Now, they're normally wrapped up in like a little foil packet, but it's definitely worth having some spares of these as well. So if you haven't got spares of these, head over and buy yourself, or head out and buy yourself some extra sewing machine needles. This is just a little universal pack, so it's got a few different sizes in there, and they come in universal, jersey, denim. There's all sorts of different types of needles you might want to purchase, but universal ones are definitely worth having a few extras in your stash as well. You want to have some spares so you don't get stuck when you're in the flow of sewing, and these are really cheap to buy, so definitely worth stocking up on a few of those. And then the other thing that I would 100% recommend you get, and you spend a bit of money on, is some decent thread. So I always use Gutermann thread. I just find that's the best. I do have a couple of different other ones that I use. For instance, sometimes I use the Moon threads, which are these ones. I use these on my overlocker, but on my standard sewing machine, I try and stick to Gutermann. They're really good quality, and what you will find with sewing thread, the cheaper threads that you buy, if you look really closely, they're really fibrous, so you'll see all the fluffiness coming off of the actual thread itself, where Gutermann aren't. You can see that it's really fine, really good quality thread. So the fibrous ones are not only going to make your machine get much more dirty more quickly, but you might find that the thread actually sort of splinters, almost sort of shreds itself, or it might snap. So definitely worth getting a quality thread. Again, I see lots of ladies coming to join me that have got these gorgeous pots of like coloured threads, all rainbow colours, that they've maybe picked up from their local supermarket, and you know, as much as it's tempting to buy this big array of colours for a really good value, they just don't quite cut it. And it causes frustration because the threads sort of get caught, they can snap, and sometimes they're even wound on incorrectly. So, you know, there's a knot halfway through the reel. So definitely worth investing and getting some of these good quality Gutermann. Now this one's a whopper. This one is 1,000 meters, I think, on there. So it's got loads on there. It's going to last you ages. And that's about £9 or £10 to buy. But buy much smaller reels. So this one is 100 meters, not going to last you quite so long, but when you're starting out, that costs about sort of £1.80 to £2.50, say, depending where you buy it from. And you can buy little packs of Gutermann thread as well in different colours, which is really good value too. So definitely worth buying a good quality thread. So have a little review online and see what people suggest. But personally, I would recommend Gutermann thread. You're going to need something to measure your work with. So whatever you're making, potentially you're going to want to measure something or draw a straight line. So there's a couple of options for this. Your good old-fashioned tape measure always comes in handy. And this is great for if you need to measure yourself, if you're dressmaking, measure your fabric. You know, it's worth having one of these anyway. And again, you might get that in your sewing machine, not always, but it's definitely worth having a tape measure. The other thing I would recommend, even if you're just starting out, is to get yourself a square ruler. Now these can sometimes cost a bit more. You can pick these up in your local supermarket every now and again when they're having a crafty event on, but these are fab. You've got some measurements on here. I've got, this one's an inches one, but you can get inches and centimetres. You've got a really good grid of 90-degree angles, so you can measure your work really, really easily. And of course you've got that 90-degree angle, straight angle, to make sure your fabrics are straight when you're cutting as well. Because again, when we start sewing, or whenever we're sewing, another essential part to sewing is making sure you're using a really straight fabric. So you want to make sure all your fabrics you're using are cut on the straight. And quite often they're not if you buy them online or from shops. As the seamstresses cut them in the shops, you know, they're not necessarily going to be cut straight, and that's just how it is when you're cutting something. So definitely worth having an angled ruler. And if you venture into dressmaking, you'll know there's all sorts of different rulers you can purchase out there to help you with that type of thing. So I would recommend one of these. This one isn't humongous. This is a 12-inch ruler. So you could pick these up probably for about maybe £4 upwards. Yeah, that's what I would recommend as well. So one of those. Once you've measured your work out, of course, you're also going to want to mark your work. So you might want to mark your fabrics. So you're going to need something to mark them with as well. So either a pen, a disappearing pen, or a tailor's chalk of some sort. Some people like to use the sort of flat chalk. Some people like to use the pencils. But you're going to need something to mark your work with. So it's definitely worth picking up one of these. And again, you can get these quite cheaply. You can get them in sets as well. And actually, Gutermann, if you search, do a little pack where you get a pen or a pencil and lots of thread as well. So that's definitely worth looking out for as well. You could buy sort of packs of things to make it more cost effective for you. But they're quite low cost. And then of course, once you've marked all your work, marked your fabric, you're going to want to cut as well. So scissors, or a rotary cutter, or both if you want to invest into that. But really, you just need to start with some scissors. I would suggest getting the best you can afford when you're starting out. Dressmaking scissors. These are 8-inch, and this is perfect size really for cutting any type of fabric. You want to get the best you can afford really, because they're going to last much longer, they're going to stay sharper for longer, and that really does help you with cutting your work. You'll find if you try and use, you know, a kitchen pair of scissors or a cheaper pair, when you first buy them they'll be fine for a little while, but they'll soon blunt, and then it's really hard to get a nice cut, straight cut. Your fabric sort of moves and doesn't cut through properly, so definitely invest in a really good, nice pair of scissors. So this pair actually weren't that expensive, and I really love these. I sell these in my online shop. These are about £12, I want to say, which is really good value, but you can invest in, you know, other brands that cost a lot more. So just have a little look on the internet, or check out some reviews for scissors. If you've got a particularly good pair of scissors that you love, pop them in the comments below so everyone else can have a look as well. But a good pair of scissors, the best you can afford, is definitely worth the investment. Then other things that you might want to also add to your sewing supplies are things like, well actually one thing I'm missing, you need something to secure your work. So you need some pins or clips or a bit of both maybe. Again, these are really low cost, so you can sort of have a mix and match. Pins to secure your work, definitely. And these are fabric clips. These are fab. Typically quilters use these because they can hold a lot of fabric in the middle there and secure it, whereas a pin can sometimes struggle to do that. But they're great. They hold your fabric in place around the edge. They obviously don't prick your fingers when you're sewing. And also what I love about these, you have to take them out as you're sewing. People sometimes sew over their pins. I never recommend them. Definitely take your pins out as you're sewing. Don't sew over them. So you need something to secure your work. So pins or clips, whichever you prefer. And then something that I like to use that you don't need to have in your sewing supplies when you first start off. There's a couple of things that I really enjoy using. You can't see here, it's over on my cutting table here. I use a rotary cutter from time to time, especially if I'm cutting out patterns. And I've got a really big cutting mat, which I love. The bigger the better almost, because then you don't have to keep moving your fabric around. I'll pop a picture of my cutting mat in here for you. So I love a big cutting mat. I can keep it out on my work surface. It gives me plenty of room, and you need that if you're using a rotary cutter. So a rotary cutter is another extra little tool you can add to your sewing equipment. Just like your scissors, it works in the same way, but you obviously use it to cut. You release the blade and you cut your fabric following around the design or the pattern, whatever you're using, but you must use a cutting board to do that because they're very sharp, really sharp. But they're fab as well, and I use a mixture really. It's not essential to have a rotary cutter, and I use a mixture of the two depending on what I'm cutting. So that's another nice little extra to have in your stash. The other thing I love using, which I've got more recently actually, is a tracing wheel and some chalk paper. Now the more dressmaking I've been doing more recently, I've been using these all the time. So you can mark out your darts with this or any other sort of marks on patterns that you need to. It's super. You basically, what you do is you have you buy these chalk papers instead of a chalk pencil. They come in sort of a range of different colours. Like so, this side has got a chalk on. You put that underneath your fabric, the fabric goes on top, and then you roll the marking tool over that, over the sort of darts or whatever markings you need on your pattern. Sort of picks up the chalk underneath and marks your fabric for you, and then you can use that for when you're stitching or when you need to cut. So this is what I love at the moment, but again, it's not essential, it's a nicety, and the more you sew, these sort of little tools you'll pick up and decide you want. And probably the other things that I really enjoy using are things that I've made myself to assist me in my sewing. One of those things being my fabulous thread catcher. This is one of my face-to-face workshops I have held in the past, and I love this. This is coming out as an online tutorial soon as well, so you can enjoy it online, but it's brilliant. You can keep all your pins in the little pin cushion part at the top. You sit it on your work's surface, it hangs off the side to collect all your sort of scraps and rubbish. It's just brilliant. You can move it to your ironing board. I love it. I wouldn't be without that now. I've got two in my sewing room here, so I've sort of moved them around. As my pins fill up on one, I use that, and then as they go to the other, I swap it around. But that's another fab addition that I use in my sewing room. And the other thing that I use quite often is my sewing ham as well. So this is my sewing ham. It's just a really compacted sort of little cushion as such, and you use this to help with your pressing and ironing of seams, sort of small seams, curved seams like shoulder seams, necklines, anything that you want to get in really close and tight to that may be curved. There's also a tutorial to make this on my YouTube channel. I'll pop the link up here for you so you can have a go. But that's another little addition I always have next to my ironing board to use when I'm sewing. So there's loads of different things that you can get, loads of things you don't need to get straight away, and it's quite nice to buy the basics and then gradually build up the extra bits and pieces, gadgets you might see as you go along. And then probably there's loads more that you guys are using, so put them in the comments below so we can see what everybody enjoys using while they're doing their sewing. So I can't wait to hear all your comments and see what you think and what you enjoy using in your sewing from day to day, and see what I've missed out maybe. These are what I think would be really useful for you. And in fact, I'll pop a little list up at the end of here just to give you an idea of some of the essentials I think would be handy to have when you're beginning. And then once you've got them, you're ready to get sewing. So there's loads of tutorials on my channel here. You can scroll back and have a look. There's different ones to help you out at different things. And there's tutorials that I download all the time. In fact, if you subscribe to my channel, you'll get a notification of this little drawstring bag. It's a free tutorial that's coming up on my channel really soon, showing you step by step how to make this fabulous little drawstring bag. You basically open it up and you can store all of your goodies inside. That's coming up really soon. So subscribe to my channel to get the notification when this is coming down, and it'd be a perfect project to start you off. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Sorry it's a bit later today, and I look forward to our next Sewing Conversations over coffee really soon. So until next time, see you later. Bye.